Abandoned beside her alien mother's lifeless body, a human stranger became the girl's only hope. Jason Mercer wiped sweat from his brow as he trudged across the barren landscape of Proxima B, a forgotten world once home to the now-extinct Azurians. The twin stars overhead beat down mercilessly, turning the abandoned alien metropolis into a shimmering mirage of broken spires and collapsed domes. "Another dead end," he muttered, kicking a piece of rubble with his heavy boot. The metal detector in his hand remained stubbornly silent. No precious metals, no valuable alien tech. Nothing worth the fuel he'd burned in getting here. At 32, Jason had long abandoned any pretense of heroism or nobility. The galaxy had beaten that out of him years ago during the Centauri Wars. Now he was just another scavenger, picking through the bones of dead civilizations for anything that would fetch a decent price on Nexus Station's black market. His weathered face, once handsome enough to charm information out of intelligence officers and credits out of wealthy patrons, now bore the permanent scowl of a man who expected the worst and was rarely disappointed. The light brown stubble on his jaw matched his short, military-cut hair, and his piercing blue eyes constantly scanned for threats or opportunities, usually both. "Piece of shit detector," he grumbled, smacking the device against his palm. "Cost me 3 months' worth of salvage and can't find a damn thing worth." The detector suddenly shrieked to life, its display flashing red. "Well, hello there," Jason said, his scowl transforming into something resembling a smile. "What have we here?" Following the signal, he approached what appeared to be a partially collapsed structure, perhaps once a residence or small research facility. The detector's wail grew more insistent as he neared the entrance, suggesting something of significant value lay within. Jason drew his pulse pistol, standard procedure when exploring ruins. Too many scavengers had become permanent additions to the places they'd hoped to plunder. Stepping carefully over fallen debris, he entered the structure, the filtered light casting long shadows across the dusty floor. The detector led him deeper into the building, through corridors where alien scripts still adorned the walls, faded but legible to those with the right translation software. Jason ignored it. History didn't pay, artifacts did. As he approached what appeared to be a central chamber, the detector's signal peaked. But something else caught his attention. A sound. Soft, rhythmic, unmistakable. Sobbing. Jason froze, his finger tensing on the trigger of his weapon. Survivors were rare on devastated worlds and rarely friendly, but this sounded young. Cautiously, he rounded the corner into the chamber and stopped dead in his tracks. In the center of the room, illuminated by a shaft of light from a hole in the ceiling, knelt a small figure with striking blue skin and flowing white hair. A child, an Azurian child, hunched over the body of an adult female, covered with a blood-stained blanket. The child's delicate shoulders shook with each sob, her small hands clutching desperately at the blanket. "Shit," Jason whispered, lowering his weapon slightly. The child's head snapped up, revealing a face that, despite its alien features, expressed universal terror. Vivid blue eyes, swimming with tears, locked onto Jason's. She couldn't have been more than 8 by human standards, her face still round with youth despite the gauntness of hunger. "Stay back," she cried in surprisingly good standard, her voice cracking with fear and exhaustion. "Don't hurt my mother." Jason holstered his weapon slowly. "I'm not here to hurt anyone, kid." "Everyone hurts everyone," the child replied bitterly, wiping tears from her cheeks with dirty hands. Her simple gray jumpsuit was torn and filthy, suggesting she'd been alone for days, maybe weeks. Jason approached carefully, crouching down several feet away. The detector in his hand continued to beep insistently, but he silenced it with a quick tap. "What happened here?" he asked, gesturing to the covered body. The girl's lower lip trembled. The sickness, it came fast, made holes in her skin that wouldn't stop bleeding. She stroked the blanket gently. "She told me to hide if anyone came. Said they'd take me away." Jason's eyes narrowed as he scanned the room. His detector was going crazy for a reason. Something valuable was here, possibly related to whatever had killed the mother. If the Azurians had been experimenting with something dangerous, the thought of potential profit warred briefly with an unfamiliar tightening in his chest as he looked at the child. Alone, terrified, starving. "Damn it," he muttered under his breath. "What's your name, kid?" "Evra," she whispered, still clutching the blanket. Jason sighed heavily, already regretting what he was about to do. "Listen, Evra, we need to leave this place. It's not safe." "I won't leave her," Evra cried, throwing herself protectively over the blanket. Jason ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "Look, I get it, but you can't stay here. You'll die too." "Then I'll die," she said with the simple determination only children possess. Jason's jaw tightened. "Leave the blanket. I have to take you out of here." In response, Avira only hugged her mother's body tighter, her sobs growing louder. "No, I'll never see her again." Something in her desperate cry broke through Jason's carefully constructed wall of indifference. Before he could stop himself, he moved forward and gently picked up the sobbing child. She struggled briefly, then collapsed against his chest, her small body racked with grief. "I'm sorry, kid," he murmured, surprised by the gentleness in his own voice, "but we need to go." As he carried her from the ruins, his detector forgotten on the floor beside the covered body, Jason couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just made either the most compassionate or the most foolish decision of his life. Either way, there was no going back now. Jason's ship, the Nomad, wasn't much to look at, a modified Terran Frontier-class transport with mismatched hull plates and outdated systems. But it was home, and right now it was the safest place for Avera. He carried the exhausted child up the loading ramp, her small blue arms wrapped tightly around his neck. Her tears had subsided into occasional hiccups and sniffles, her face buried against his shoulder. The weight of her tiny body against his chest stirred something protective in him that he'd thought long dead. "Welcome aboard," he said awkwardly as the airlock hissed shut behind them. "It's not much, but it's clean. Mostly." Evra didn't respond, her eyes taking in the cramped interior of the ship with wary curiosity. The main cabin was a cluttered mix of salvage tech, star charts, and the occasional empty protein pack. A small galley, a cramped bathroom, and Jason's quarters made up the rest of the living space, with a cargo hold below. "You hungry?" Jason asked, setting her down gently on the worn couch that doubled as an emergency bunk. Evra nodded hesitantly, her vivid blue eyes still rimmed with red from crying. "Right. Food. I can do food." He rummaged through the galley storage, finding a nutrient bar and a pouch of filtered water. "It's not gourmet, but it'll keep you going." She accepted the offerings with trembling hands, devouring the bar in seconds. Jason watched her, a frown creasing his forehead. How long had she been alone with her dead mother? Days? Weeks? "When you're done, we should get you cleaned up," he said, gesturing to the bathroom. "And I should, check you over. Make sure you're okay." Evra stiffened. "Are you a doctor?" "No, but I've got a med scanner. Standard equipment for solo operators. Patched myself up more times than I can count." After she'd finished eating and drinking, Jason showed her how to operate the sonic shower and found her a clean shirt that hung on her like a dress. While she cleaned up, he prepared the med scanner, an outdated but functional Terran military model he'd acquired during his less legitimate days. When Avera emerged from the bathroom, her blue skin gleaming and her white hair damp but clean, she looked marginally better. The dirt was gone, revealing the true azure hue of her skin, not the dull blue he'd initially seen. Intricate patterns, almost like birthmarks, traced delicate lines across her forearms and upper neck. "Those markings," Jason said, pointing. "You were born with them?" Evra nodded. "All Azurians have them. Mother said they're our life story, written before we live it." "Poetic," Jason muttered. "Come sit here. This won't hurt." She perched on the edge of the couch while Jason ran the scanner over her. The device hummed softly, its small screen displaying rapidly changing data. Jason's brow furrowed as he read the results. "That's impossible," he whispered. "What's wrong?" Evra asked, fear creeping back into her voice. Jason stared at the scanner, then at the child. "Your DNA, it's not standard Azurian. It's been modified." "Modified?" "Changed, altered." He tapped the screen. "There's a sequence here that doesn't match any known Azurian genetic pattern. It's adaptive, self-rewriting." Evra looked down at her hands. "Is that bad?" I don't know, Jason admitted, but I think it's why you didn't get sick when your mother did. A memory clicked into place, the detector's insistent beeping in the ruins. It hadn't been detecting metal or tech. It had been calibrated to find rare biological signatures as well. Signatures like Evera's. Your mother, Jason said slowly. Was she a scientist? Evera nodded. She worked in the big building with the silver dome. She said she was making us better. Making you immune, Jason murmured, but something went wrong. He ran the scanner over her again, focusing on the strange patterns on her skin. The device beeped as it detected something unusual. The markings weren't just pigmentation. They were active, living circuits integrated with her nervous system. Holy shit, Jason breathed. You're not just immune, you're carrying the cure. Evera's eyes widened. Cure? For the sickness? Maybe more than that. Jason's mind raced. These patterns, they're biological data storage. Your mother encoded something in your DNA, something she wanted to preserve. The implications hit him like a pulse blast. If Evera carried a cure for the plague that had wiped out her people, she would be priceless to medical corporations throughout the galaxy. And if she carried something more, some kind of genetic advancement, the military applications would be endless. She would be hunted, dissected, exploited. The old Jason, the one who cared only about profit, would have seen dollar signs, a payday beyond imagination. But looking at the frightened child before him, with her too large borrowed shirt and her tear-stained face, he felt only a fierce desire to protect her. Am I, broken? Evera asked in a small voice. Jason shook his head firmly. No, you're special. Your mother made sure of that. He switched off the scanner and set it aside. But we need to be careful. There are people, aliens, who would want what you have. Will you send me away? The question was barely audible. Jason looked at her for a long moment. Every instinct for self-preservation told him to drop her at the nearest Federation outpost and disappear. But something stronger, something he'd thought buried under years of cynicism and survival, wouldn't let him. No, he said finally. I won't send you away. For the first time since he'd found her, Evera smiled, a small, hesitant thing that transformed her face and somehow reached into Jason's chest and squeezed. Thank you, she whispered. Jason cleared his throat, suddenly uncomfortable with the unfamiliar warmth spreading through him. Yeah, well, don't thank me yet, kid. We've got a long way to go. As Evera's eyes began to droop with exhaustion, Jason realized he had no idea where they would go or what they would do. But one thing was certain, the universe had just become a much more dangerous place for both of them. Jason jerked awake to the sound of an alarm blaring through the nomad's cabin. Red emergency lights pulsed overhead as he stumbled from his bunk, cursing fluently. Computer, status report, he barked, pulling on his pants with one hand while reaching for his pulse pistol with the other. Unknown tracking signal detected. The ship's AI responded in its flat, emotionless voice. Signal origin, ship's hull, port side, near auxiliary thrusters. A beacon? Jason muttered. How the hell? His thoughts raced back to the ruins. Someone must have been monitoring the site, waiting for anyone to discover what remained of the Azurian research, and now they knew exactly where to find Evera. The child appeared in the doorway of the small storage compartment he'd converted into a sleeping space for her, rubbing her eyes sleepily. What's happening? Nothing to worry about, Jason lied smoothly, holstering his weapon to avoid frightening her further. Just a little ship trouble. Go back to sleep. Evera frowned, clearly not believing him. I'm not a baby. Is someone coming for me? Jason sighed. The kid was too perceptive for her own good. Maybe, but they'll have to get through me first, and I'm notoriously hard to kill. He moved to the ship's control panel, initiating a deeper scan of the tracking device. The results made him whistle low between his teeth. The beacon was sophisticated, military grade, not the kind of tech scavengers or pirates typically carried. Whoever had planted it had resources. Can you remove it? Evera asked, coming to stand beside him. Not without going outside, and we don't have time for a spacewalk. Jason's fingers flew over the controls, plotting a rapid course away from their current position. We need to move now. Strap in. As Evera buckled herself into the co-pilot seat, Jason fired up the engines and disengaged from the automated orbit they'd established around the Azurian homeworld. The Nomad shuddered, then shot forward into the darkness of space. "Where are we going?" Evera asked, her small blue hands gripping the seat restraints. "Somewhere they won't follow easily." Jason pushed the engines harder than was strictly safe, the ship groaning in protest. "I know some places in the Veil Nebula where tracking signals get scrambled." The ship's sensors beeped an alert, and Jason swore under his breath. "Too late. We've got company." A sleek vessel had appeared on their tail, all gleaming black hull plates and predatory lines. It was clearly built for pursuit, its engines already flaring as it accelerated to match the Nomad's desperate pace. "That's a Quarian hunter ship," Jason said grimly. "Top of the line. Whoever's after you has serious backing." The Quarians were notorious mercenaries, selling their services to the highest bidder without question or moral qualm. Their ships were as ruthless as they were, designed to run down prey with relentless efficiency. "They're hailing us," Jason noted as a communication request flashed on the console. Evera's eyes widened with fear. "Don't answer!" "I have to, kid. If I don't, they'll just start shooting." He squeezed her shoulder reassuringly. "Don't worry, I've talked my way out of worse." With a deep breath, Jason accepted the transmission. The view screen flickered to life, revealing a striking female figure. She wasn't Quarian as he'd expected, but something else entirely. Tall and lithe, with pale lavender skin and sharp angular features, framed by silver hair cut in a severe bob. Her eyes were the most unsettling part. Solid black orbs without iris or pupil, like looking into twin voids. "Human," she said, her voice melodic despite the coldness in her expression. "I am Commander Naira Zen of the Pax Genetica. You have something that belongs to us." Jason raised an eyebrow, keeping his expression neutral, despite the chill that ran down his spine at the name. The Pax Genetica was a shadowy research consortium, rumored to conduct genetic experiments that would make even the most hardened Federation scientists blanch. "I'm just a salvager," he replied casually. "Everything on my ship is legally obtained." Nira's black eyes narrowed. The Azurian child. She carries genetic modifications that are Pax Genetica intellectual property. Jason felt Evera shrink against him, trembling slightly. He placed a protective hand on her shoulder. "I don't know what you're talking about," he lied. "There's no child on board." "Do not insult my intelligence, human." Naira's voice remained calm, but her expression hardened. "Our sensors detect her unique biosignature, the same one we've been monitoring since her mother stole our research and fled with it." Jason's mind raced. So Evera's mother hadn't been creating the cure. She'd been stealing it, trying to save her daughter and her people from whatever the Pax had planned. "The child will be returned to us," Nira continued. "You will be compensated generously for your cooperation. 5 million credits should suffice." It was more money than Jason had seen in his entire life. Enough to buy a new ship, a legitimate business, maybe even a small estate on one of the core worlds. 5 years ago, he wouldn't have hesitated. But 5 years ago, he hadn't been holding the shoulder of a terrified child who looked at him as her only protector in the universe. "That's a generous offer," Jason said, stalling for time as he surreptitiously programmed the nav computer. "But I think you've got the wrong ship." Nira's expression didn't change, but her voice dropped several degrees. "You have 1 minute to power down your engines and prepare for boarding, or we will disable your vessel and take what we want by force. The choice is yours, human." The transmission cut off abruptly. "Are you going to give me to them?" Evera asked, her voice small but steady. Jason looked down at her, at the intricate patterns on her skin that contained secrets worth killing for, at the trust in her eyes that he'd done nothing to earn. "Not a chance in hell, kid." He grinned, the old reckless fire lighting in his eyes. "Hold on tight. This is going to get rough." With a flick of his wrist, Jason cut the main engines, sending the Nomad into a controlled tumble that momentarily confused the Quarian ship's targeting systems. In the same motion, he activated the emergency thrusters in a pattern that sent them hurtling toward a nearby asteroid field. A dangerous gambit, but one that might give them the edge they needed. "They're bigger, faster, and better armed," he told Evera, as the first warning shots from the hunter ship streaked past them. "But I'm meaner, and I know every dirty trick in the book." As they plunged into the swirling field of space rock, Jason felt something he hadn't experienced in years, the fierce joy of fighting for something that mattered. The Nomad burst from the asteroid field trailing smoke and sparks, its hull scorched from a glancing hit by the hunter ship's weapons. Jason's hands danced across the controls, compensating for sluggish response from the damaged port thrusters. "Status report," he demanded, his voice tight with concentration. "Primary propulsion at 63%, the ship's AI responded. "Hull integrity compromised in sections 3 and 7. Life support stable. Fuel reserves at 48%. Not good, but not catastrophic either." The asteroid field had served its purpose. The Corian ship, despite its superior firepower, had been forced to slow down to navigate the densely packed rocks. By the time they emerged, the Nomad had gained valuable distance. "They're still following," Ivera observed, pointing at the long-range scanner, where a blip pulsed steadily behind them. "Yeah, but we bought some time." Jason studied the star chart, looking for options. "We need repairs before we can make a run for Federation space." His eyes settled on a small, unremarkable dot labeled Helios Station. It wasn't his first choice, or even his 10th, but beggars couldn't be choosers. "Helios it is," he muttered, setting the course. "What's Helios?" Evra asked, her blue fingers tracing the patterns on her arm absently. "A trading post? Well, that's what they call it officially." Jason grimaced. "Really, it's a haven for smugglers, mercenaries, and anyone else who doesn't want to answer questions? Not exactly a family vacation spot, but they've got repair facilities and don't care who you are, as long as your credits are good." Evra's expression grew serious. "Will they turn us in?" "Not if we're careful." Jason reached over and ruffled her white hair, surprising himself with the casual affection. "We'll need a disguise for you, though. Those markings are pretty distinctive." 4 hours later, the Nomad limped into Helios Station's docking bay. The station was a hodgepodge of salvaged ship parts and prefabricated modules, all welded together into a rough ring surrounding a central hub. Neon signs in a dozen alien languages advertised everything from exotic pleasures to black market cybernetics. Jason had cobbled together a disguise for Evra, a hooded cloak that covered her distinctive blue skin and white hair, and a dermal spray that temporarily masked her luminescent markings. To complete the illusion, he'd given her a breather mask, common enough among species with different atmospheric requirements that it wouldn't draw attention. "Remember, stay close and let me do the talking," Jason instructed as they prepared to disembark. "If anyone asks, you're my niece from the Pleiades colonies with a rare skin condition." Evra nodded solemnly. "I understand." The docking bay was a cacophony of sounds and smells, the hiss of pressure seals, the clang of repair drones, the reek of fuel and unwashed bodies from a dozen different species. Jason kept a protective hand on Evra's shoulder as they navigated through the crowd toward the repair hub. At the service counter, a hulking Dravian with mottled green skin and 4 arms looked up from a holographic display. His bulbous eyes narrowed at the sight of Jason. "Human," he grunted, the translator module on his throat, converting his native clicks and whistles into rough standard. "What you want?" "Repairs," Jason replied, sliding a credit chip across the counter. "Port thrusters damaged, hull breach in sections 3 and 7. Need it, fast and quiet." The Dravian's upper arms snatched up the chip while his lower ones tapped at a console. 6 hours, 8,000 credits. 6,000, Jason countered automatically. "And you throw in a fuel top-up." 7,500, no fuel. 7,000 with fuel, and I don't mention to station security that you're running unregistered Tarkanian power cells. Jason nodded toward the telltale blue glow emanating from the repair bay. The Dravian's throat sac inflated in what might have been a sigh or a suppressed curse. 7,000 with fuel, 4 hours. Deal. Jason slid another chip across the counter. "And I need a room. Somewhere quiet." The Dravian gestured with one of his upper arms. "Level 3, Section D, pay terminal there." As they turned to leave, the Dravian called after them. "Human, be careful. Strange ones asking questions, looking for blue-skinned child." Jason's blood ran cold, but he kept his expression neutral. "Thanks for the heads up." They made their way through the crowded corridors of Helios, past vendors hawking everything from exotic foods to weapons of questionable legality. Vera stayed pressed against Jason's side, her eyes wide behind her mask as she took in the bewildering array of alien species. "They're already here," she whispered, her voice muffled by the breather. "Seems that way," Jason replied grimly, "but this station's a maze. We'll lay low until the ship's ready." They found their assigned quarters, a dingy room with stained walls and furniture bolted to the floor. It wasn't much, but it had a functioning lock and a small viewport overlooking the docking ring. "Home, sweet home," Jason muttered, securing the door behind them. At least for the next 4 hours. Evra removed her mask and hood, shaking out her white hair. "What if they find us before the ship is fixed?" "They won't," Jason assured her, though he wasn't nearly as confident as he sounded. He checked his pulse pistol, ensuring it was fully charged. "And if they do, well, I've gotten out of tighter spots." He moved to the viewport, scanning the docking bay below. His heart skipped a beat when he spotted 2 Quarian mercenaries moving methodically through the crowd, stopping occasionally to question merchants and travelers. "Damn it," he muttered. "Well, they're thorough. I'll give them that." Evra joined him at the window, her small face solemn. "It's because of what's inside me, isn't it? The thing my mother put there." Jason looked down at her, struck again by how perceptive she was. "Yeah, kid. Whatever your mom encoded in your DNA, it's valuable enough that they're willing to tear apart half the galaxy to get it." "She said it would save everyone," Evra said quietly, "but it didn't save her." Jason crouched down to her level, meeting her vivid blue eyes. "Your mother was very brave and very smart. She trusted you to carry something important, and now we need to make sure it gets to the right people." "Who are the right people?" It was a good question. One Jason didn't have a complete answer for yet. The Federation would protect Vera, but they might also exploit her genetic modifications for their own purposes. Independent researchers might help decode the information without political agendas, but they lacked the resources to keep her safe from the Pax Genetica. Before he could formulate a response, a sharp knock at the door made them both freeze. "Station security!" called a voice that was decidedly not a station official. "Open up for a routine inspection." Jason's mind raced as the pounding on the door grew more insistent. He motioned for Rivera to quickly put her disguise back on while he reached into his pack, pulling out a small metal case he hadn't opened in years. "Station security. Final warning before forced entry." "Just a moment," Jason called, his voice shifting into a clipped, authoritative tone as he flipped open the case. Inside lay a Galactic Federation insignia and ID chip, relics from his brief stint as a Federation scout before he'd chosen the more profitable path of salvage and smuggling. The ID was expired, but it would still scan as authentic in most systems. More importantly, it carried the weight of humanity's respected position within the Federation. He clipped the insignia to his vest and slipped the ID chip into his wrist scanner, just as Avera finished securing her hood and mask. "Follow my lead," he whispered to her. "You're a diplomatic ward under Federation protection." With a deep breath, Jason opened the door, standing tall and imposing in the frame. 2 Quarian mercenaries stood outside, hulking reptilian figures with mottled gray skin and eyes that gleamed with predatory intelligence. Behind them lurked the unmistakable lavender form of Commander Naira Zen. "What is the meaning of this intrusion?" Jason demanded, his voice carrying the unmistakable authority of a Federation official. He tapped his insignia meaningfully. "I'm conducting classified Federation business." The Quarians hesitated, exchanging glances. Naira stepped forward, her black eyes narrowing as she studied Jason's insignia. "The Federation involvement was not indicated in our intelligence," she said smoothly. "What business does the Federation have in this sector?" Jason raised an eyebrow, channeling every haughty Federation officer he'd ever encountered. "That's classified, Commander Zen. But since you've already compromised our security protocols by tracking us here, I suppose there's no harm in telling you we're transporting a diplomatic ward." He gestured to Evra, "a survivor of the Azurian plague with potentially valuable medical information." Naira's expression remained impassive, but Jason detected a flicker of uncertainty in her posture. "The Pax Genetica has legal claim to all Azurian genetic research. It was conducted under our supervision." "I'm afraid that's not accurate," Jason countered smoothly. The Federation Ethics Committee has determined that non-consensual genetic experimentation violates Statute 447B of the Galactic Accords. The ward is now under Federation protection, pending a full investigation. He was bluffing wildly, stringing together official-sounding terms he'd picked up during his legitimate days. But humans had a reputation throughout the galaxy for their complex legal systems and unwavering ethical standards. A stereotype he was now exploiting shamelessly. Naira's lavender skin darkened slightly, a sign of irritation in her species. I was not informed of any ethics committee ruling. It was issued yesterday, Jason replied without missing a beat. Priority communication channels only. I'm surprised your superiors haven't briefed you. He checked his wrist scanner with deliberate casualness. I can arrange a secure transmission to Federation headquarters if you'd like to verify my credentials. It was a calculated risk. If she called his bluff and actually requested verification, they'd be exposed. But Jason was betting on the universal truth that even the most ruthless organizations had bureaucratic tangles and communication delays. Nira studied him for a long moment, her black eyes unreadable. Then she turned to the Corians. Stand down. The mercenaries stepped back, though their postures remained alert. This isn't over, Agent, Naira said, her melodic voice carrying an unmistakable threat. The Pax Genetica will file a formal protest with the Federation Council. That is your right, Commander, Jason acknowledged with professional courtesy. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have a diplomatic schedule to maintain. Naira's gaze shifted to Avera, who stood silently beside Jason, her face hidden behind the breather mask. The child appears ill-suited for diplomatic functions. The ward's condition requires special accommodations, Jason replied smoothly. Her respiratory system was damaged during the plague outbreak. A tense silence followed as Naira seemed to weigh her options. Finally, she inclined her head slightly. Very well, Agent, but be advised that the Pax Genetica will be monitoring this situation closely. Noted, Commander. Safe travels. As Naira and her mercenaries retreated down the corridor, Jason maintained his official posture until they disappeared around a corner. Then he quickly closed the door, letting out a long, shaky breath. Holy shit, that actually worked, he muttered, running a hand through his hair. Evra pulled down her mask, her blue eyes wide with amazement. You lied to them, and they believed you. Humans have a reputation for being sticklers about rules and ethics, Jason explained with a wry smile. Makes us terrible poker players, but great bluffers in a pinch. What's poker? A game I'll teach you when we're not running for our lives. He checked his wrist scanner for the time. We've still got 3 hours before the Nomad's ready. They bought the act for now, but Naira's no fool. She'll be checking my story, and when she finds out I'm not actually a Federation agent, we'll be gone by then, right? Ever asked hopefully. That's the plan, but we need to move to a different location. They know we're on this level now. Jason packed up their meager belongings and cautiously led Avera out into the corridor. They took a circuitous route through the station, avoiding the main thoroughfares where Naira's agents might be watching. Eventually, they found themselves in a dimly lit cantina near the repair docks where the clientele was too absorbed in their own shady dealings to pay attention to a human and a small, disguised figure. They claimed a booth in the back corner with a clear view of both exits. Jason ordered a synthetic protein meal for Evera and a stiff drink for himself, his nerves still jangling from the close call. You were really brave back there, he told Avera as she cautiously sampled the food. She looked up at him with those unnervingly perceptive eyes. You were scared too, I could tell. Jason chuckled. That obvious, huh? Only to me, she said with unexpected wisdom. Mother said I was good at reading people's feelings. Your mother was right. Jason took a sip of his drink, wincing at the burn. You're pretty remarkable, kid. Evera's blue fingers traced patterns on the table's surface. Jason, what happens if we get away? Where will we go? It was a question he'd been avoiding. The responsible thing would be to take her to the actual Federation. They had the resources to protect her and research the genetic information she carried. But Federation bureaucracy moved at a glacial pace, and there was no guarantee they wouldn't simply lock her away in some research facility for her own protection. I know some people, he said finally. Good people. Scientists who used to work for the Federation but went independent. They might be able to help decode whatever your mother put in your DNA without turning you into a lab specimen. And then what? Avera pressed. After they decode it, Jason met her gaze, suddenly struck by how much he'd come to care about her future in such a short time. Then we figure it out together, one step at a time. A notification beeped on his wrist scanner, a message from the repair bay. The Nomad was ahead of schedule, nearly ready for departure. Looks like our luck's turning, Jason said with a grin. Finish up, we're getting out of this dump. As Avera hurriedly ate the last of her meal, Jason scanned the cantina once more, his instincts suddenly on alert. Nothing seemed amiss, but years of close calls had taught him to trust his gut. Time to go, he said, dropping credits on the table. Stay close. They slipped out of the cantina and made their way toward the repair docks, Jason's hand never straying far from his concealed weapon. Freedom was tantalizingly close, just a short walk across the docking bay to the Nomad. But as they rounded the final corner, Jason's heart sank. Standing between them and their ship was Commander Naira Zenon, flanked by no fewer than 6 Korean mercenaries. And this time, she didn't look uncertain at all. Jason pulled Avera behind a stack of cargo containers, his mind racing through options that all seemed equally terrible. 6 Korean mercenaries plus Naira meant 7 highly trained killers between them and freedom. What do we do? Avera whispered, her small fingers clutching his sleeve. Jason's eyes darted around the docking bay, cataloging potential weapons, escape routes, and distractions. His gaze settled on a maintenance panel near the bay's environmental controls. I need you to be brave, he told Avera, squeezing her shoulder gently. When all hell breaks loose, run straight for the Nomad. The access code is 7429. Get inside and start the engines. Can you do that? Avera nodded solemnly. What about you? I'll be right behind you. He flashed her a confident grin that he didn't entirely feel. Just giving our friend something else to worry about. Jason reached to his pack and pulled out a small device, a universal security override he'd borrowed from a Federation outpost years ago. It wasn't strictly legal, but then again, neither was most of his career. On my signal, he whispered, then slipped away, keeping to the shadows as he circled toward the environmental controls. The Koreans were positioned in a standard search formation, their attention focused on scanning the crowds for any sign of Jason and Avera. Naira stood slightly apart, her lavender form distinctive among the station's varied inhabitants. Jason crept closer to the maintenance panel, keeping cargo containers between himself and the mercenaries. When he reached it, he attached the override device and entered a simple command. Emergency decompression warning, Section D-7. Alarms immediately blared throughout the docking bay. Red lights flashed as a computerized voice announced, Warning, decompression alert in Section D7. All personnel evacuate immediately. Emergency bulkheads will seal in 60 seconds. Chaos erupted as beings of all species rushed toward the exits, creating a stampede of panicked bodies. The Koreans struggled to maintain their positions amid the surge, their formation breaking apart. Now! Jason shouted to Avera, who darted from behind the containers and sprinted toward the Nomad, her small form weaving through the panicked crowd. Jason drew his pulse pistol and fired 3 rapid shots into the air, adding to the confusion. As expected, the Koreans immediately turned toward the sound, momentarily forgetting their primary target. He was about to make his own run for the ship when he noticed Naira breaking away from her guards, moving not toward him, but toward Avera, who had almost reached the Nomad's ramp. No! Jason roared, abandoning stealth to charge directly at the lavender alien. What happened next surprised him. Instead of grabbing Avera, Naira positioned herself between the child and the Koreans, who had now spotted their quarry and were raising their weapons. Run, child! Naira shouted, drawing her own sleek pistol and firing at the nearest Korean. Jason skidded to a halt, momentarily stunned by this unexpected development. Naira Zin, commander of the Pax Genetica forces hunting them, was now protecting Avera. There was no time to process this twist. 2 Koreans had broken from the group and were flanking them. Jason's military training kicked in, muscle memory from years before he'd become a scavenger. He dropped the first mercenary with a clean shot to the chest, then rolled behind a fuel canister as the second returned fire. Avera had reached the Nomad and was punching in the access code, her small blue hands trembling but determined. Nira continued firing at the Corians, her movements fluid and precise. "Mercer," she called to Jason, "we need to leave now." "We?" Jason replied incredulously, dropping another mercenary with a well-placed shot. "Last I checked, you were trying to dissect the kid." "Circumstances have changed." Nira ducked as a plasma bolt sizzled past her head. The pack's leadership lied about their intentions. They don't want a cure, they want a weapon. The ship's ramp began to lower as Avera successfully entered the code. The remaining Corians were regrouping, calling for reinforcements through their comm units. Jason made a split-second decision. "Evera, get inside," he shouted, providing covering fire as the child scrambled up the ramp. He turned to Nira, who was now pinned down behind a loading drone. "Why should I trust you?" "Because I'm currently being shot at by my own people," she replied with surprising heat. "And because I know what's in the child's DNA, it's not just a cure, it's the key to Azurian resurrection. The Pax wants to weaponize it, but I want to see it used as her mother intended." A barrage of plasma fire forced Jason back behind cover. The station's security forces would arrive any minute, and he doubted they'd be sympathetic to either side in this firefight. "Fine," he shouted to Nira, "but if you try anything..." "Save your threats, human." She fired 3 more shots, downing another Corian. "We have approximately 20 seconds before station security locks down this entire bay." Jason provided covering fire as Nira made a dash for the Nomad. He followed close behind, firing blindly over his shoulder as plasma bolts scorched the deck around his feet. They tumbled up the ramp together just as Avera hit the control to close it. Jason scrambled to his feet and raced to the cockpit, throwing himself into the pilot's seat and activating the engines. "Hold on to something," he warned as the Nomad's thrusters roared to life. The ship lurched upward, breaking free of its docking clamps with a screech of protesting metal. Jason didn't bother with departure protocols. He simply aimed the nose toward the bay doors and punched the accelerator. "The bay doors are sealed," Nira pointed out, bracing herself against the co-pilot's chair. "Not for long," Jason replied grimly, diverting power to the forward shields and weapons. He fired a concentrated burst at the door's control mechanism, causing them to stutter halfway open. Just enough space for the Nomad to squeeze through. The ship scraped against the edges of the doors as they shot out into open space, alarms blaring throughout the cockpit. "Hull integrity at 78%, the ship's AI announced calmly. "Could be worse," Jason muttered, plotting a course away from the station at maximum speed. "Now, Commander Zen, you've got about 30 seconds to convince me not to space you." Nira's black eyes met his, and for the first time, Jason detected something like respect in her gaze. "The Pax Genetica created the plague that killed the Azurians," she said without preamble. "It was supposed to be controllable, a way to force compliance from a species that refused to share their genetic technology. But it mutated, became more virulent than intended." Evera had entered the cockpit and stood frozen, her blue eyes wide with shock. Your people killed my mother? My whole world?" Nira's lavender skin darkened with what might have been shame. "Not intentionally. When we realized what was happening, some of us tried to develop a cure. Your mother was part of that team, but the Pax leadership saw an opportunity. If they couldn't control Azurian technology, they would steal it and eliminate the competition." "So why the change of heart?" Jason demanded, keeping one eye on the scanner for pursuing ships. "Because I discovered the truth about what's encoded in the child's DNA," Neri replied. "It's not just a cure for the plague, it's the entire Azurian genome, modified to resist not only the plague, but a dozen other potential bioweapons." "Your mother," she said, turning to Evera, "created the future of your species, a way for Azurians to be reborn, immune to the Pax's weapons." "And the Pax wants to use this how?" Jason asked, though he suspected he already knew. "They want to reverse engineer it," Nira confirmed. "Create new plagues that can target specific genetic markers in any species, the perfect biological weapon." The implications were staggering. With such technology, the Pax Genetica could hold entire worlds hostage, demand anything they wanted under threat of extinction. "So what's your plan?" Jason asked, still not entirely convinced of Nira's sudden conversion. "There's a research facility on Europa," she replied. "Independent, funded by scientists who left the Federation because of ethical concerns. They have the equipment to safely extract and replicate the genetic code without harming the child. Jason glanced at Avera, who was watching Naira with a mixture of fear and fascination. "What do you think, kid? Should we trust her?" Evra studied Naira for a long moment, then reached out and touched the alien woman's hand. The intricate patterns on Evra's skin seemed to pulse briefly. "She's telling the truth," Evra said with quiet certainty. "I can feel it." The Europa research facility gleamed like a silver beacon against the icy surface of Jupiter's moon. 3 weeks had passed since their narrow escape from Helios Station, and in that time, an unlikely bond had formed between the three fugitives. Jason stood at the observation window, watching as Dr. Travis, the facility's lead geneticist, worked with Avera. The child sat calmly in a specialized chair, connected to equipment that gently extracted and decoded the genetic information stored in her unique biological patterns. Nira stood beside the doctor, her lavender fingers dancing across holographic displays as she helped interpret the Azurian genetic structures. "Final extraction sequence complete," announced Dr. Travis, a middle-aged human woman with kind eyes and streaks of gray in her dark hair. "The entire genome has been successfully mapped and stored." Evra looked up at Jason through the glass and gave him a triumphant smile. He returned it with a thumbs up, his chest swelling with an unfamiliar pride. The scared, grieving child he'd found clutching her mother's body had blossomed into a resilient, hopeful young girl in the weeks they'd spent together. "Perimeter alert," announced the facility's AI suddenly. "Multiple vessels approaching from Sector 7. Jason's smile vanished. He rushed to the command center, where the security feeds showed 5 Pax Genetica warships descending toward Europa. "They found us," he muttered, activating the facility's defensive protocols. "How the hell did they track us here?" Naira entered the command center, her expression grim. "The Pax has informants everywhere. Someone must have reported our arrival." "Extraction complete," Dr. Travis announced as she and Avera joined them. "The genetic code is secure in the quantum vault." "Will they be able to get to it?" Jason asked, eyeing the approaching ships with growing concern. "Not without the biometric keys," Dr. Travis assured him. "But they could destroy the facility out of spite." Jason's military training kicked in as he assessed their options. The research facility had basic defenses, but nothing that could withstand a concentrated assault from 5 warships. "We need to evacuate," he decided. "The Nomad's ready to fly? We can take the genetic material and—" "No," Naira interrupted. "The equipment needed to properly utilize the genetic code is too large to transport. We must defend this facility." Jason looked at her in disbelief. "Against 5 warships? That's suicide?" "Not necessarily," Naira replied, her black eyes gleaming with determination. "I know Pax protocols. Their primary objective will be to capture Evra and the genetic material intact. They won't risk destroying what they came for. So they'll send in ground forces," Jason concluded, already calculating defensive positions. "Precisely." Naira moved to the facility's weapons locker and began distributing pulse rifles to the research staff. "We have approximately 20 minutes before they breach our perimeter." Jason turned to Evra, crouching down to her level. "Kid, I need you to stay with Dr. Travis in the secure lab. No matter what happens, don't come out until one of us comes for you." Evra's blue eyes were solemn but unafraid. "I understand, but Jason, my mother's code, it's not just a cure or a genome." "What do you mean?" "Dr. Travis showed me. There's a message encoded within it. My mother left instructions, a way to use the genetic material to bring back our people, but it requires a living host to activate the process." Jason's blood ran cold. "You? She intended you to be the host?" Evra nodded. "It won't hurt me. It will use my body as a template to create new Azurians, like seeds growing from a tree." Before Jason could process this revelation, the facility shuddered as the first Pax ships entered orbit around Europa. "We'll figure that out later," he promised, giving her shoulder a reassuring squeeze. "Right now we need to make sure there's a later." As Dr. Travis led Avera to the secure lab, Jason turned to Naira. In the 3 weeks they'd spent together, his initial distrust had gradually transformed into respect, and eventually something deeper. They'd spent long nights discussing strategy, sharing stories of their pasts, and gradually discovering a connection that transcended their different species. "You know," he said with a wry smile, "when I picked up a scavenge job on that abandoned planet, I wasn't expecting to end up defending a secret lab against my girlfriend's former employers." Nira's lavender skin darkened slightly, her species equivalent of a blush. "Girlfriend? Is that what I am to you, human?" "Well, I don't know what the Pax Genetica calls it, but where I come from, when two people share a bed for 2 weeks straight and risk their lives for each other, girlfriend is the minimum applicable term." A rare smile curved Nira's lips. "On my world, we would call you my chosen warrior, but I find I rather like your human term." Their moment was interrupted as the facility's alarms blared. The security feeds showed Pax dropships deploying troops around the perimeter. "Looks like the party's starting," Jason said, checking his pulse rifle. "Ready to show your ex-bosses what happens when they mess with a human and his family?" Nira's expression softened momentarily at the word family. "I have observed that humans fight with extraordinary ferocity when protecting those they care about." "Damn right we do," Jason replied with a fierce grin. "It's kind of our thing." The next hour was a blur of plasma fire and tactical maneuvers. Jason coordinated the facility's defenses with precision born from his military days, while Nira's intimate knowledge of Pax tactics allowed them to anticipate and counter each assault. Together, they held the line against waves of Quarian mercenaries and Pax special forces. When the smoke cleared, the facility remained secure, though not without cost. Several research staff had been wounded, and sections of the outer labs had been breached. But the secure lab remained untouched, and with it, Evora and the precious genetic material. In the aftermath, as the Pax forces regrouped for what would surely be another assault, Jason found Nira in the medical bay, treating a wound on her arm. "That was just the first wave," he said, helping her bandage the injury. "They'll be back with reinforcements." "I know," she replied, her voice weary but determined, "but we've bought time for Dr. Travis to complete the activation sequence for Evera's genetic process." Jason's hand paused on her arm. "You mean—" "Yes. While we were fighting, Dr. Travis was following the encoded instructions. The process has begun. Evora is now generating the template cells that will grow into new Azorians." Hope and wonder replaced the fatigue in Jason's eyes. "So even if we don't survive the next assault, the Azurian species will live on," Nira confirmed. "Your human compassion saved more than just one child, Jason. You've saved an entire civilization." Something in her voice made him look at her more closely. The admiration in her black eyes stirred feelings he'd been trying to keep in check amid the chaos. "We're not dead yet," he said with determination, "and I didn't go through all this just to lose you now." Their lips met in a kiss that bridged worlds. Human and alien, united by something stronger than either had expected to find in the vastness of space. 3 months later, Jason stood on the observation deck of the newly expanded Europa facility, watching as Evera played with 5 young Azurians, the first of a new generation. Their blue skin and white hair matched hers, though each bore unique patterns that would one day tell their own genetic stories. Nira joined him, slipping her hand into his. Her former colleagues at the Pax Genetica had eventually been forced to retreat when Federation forces, alerted by Dr. Travis's distress call, arrived to secure the facility. The subsequent investigation had exposed the Pax's illegal biological weapons program, leading to sanctions and the organization's eventual dissolution. "The Federation Council has approved our proposal," Nira informed him. "The Azurian homeworld will be restored and protected as the new generation matures." "And us?" Jason asked, turning to face her. "What does the Council think about a human and a former Pax commander raising Azurian children together?" Nira's lips curved in that smile he'd grown to love. "They find it highly irregular, but as your human saying goes, they can't argue with results." Jason laughed and pulled her closer. "Humanity's greatest talent, making the irregular work." As they watched Evera teaching the young Azurians a human game she'd learned from Jason, he reflected on the strange path that had led him here, from a cynical scavenger interested only in profit, to the protector of a new civilization and part of a family unlike any other in the galaxy. You know, he said softly, when I found Evra beside her mother's body, I thought I was saving her. And instead, Naira prompted. Jason smiled, watching as Zavera's laughter echoed through the facility, the sound of hope and new beginnings. Instead, she saved me.